Why, hello there. I'm writer, director, sometimes podcaster Andy Palastides. You might recognise me from the podcast for Great Derelict. No? I mean, Kit does talk about it at least once every season. Anyway, you are listening to the Coffee and Geography podcast, so grab yourself a beverage and enjoy the listen.
Hello everybody, welcome to the third episode of season 6 of Coffee and Geography. And Robin Hayward, you're my guest for today. I just didn't even go with some really profound intro. I just went straight into it because my guests, they're amazing, speak for themselves. I have a lot in common with this guest, and I just want to get straight on and saying hello. How you doing, Robin?
Fantastic. Hello. I'm doing very well, thanks. How are you doing?
Yes, so you know, as people would guess, we had our little pre-record chat, and but it's Friday. I'm happy it's Friday. Got plenty to do over the weekend. Got to finish helping my eldest with his Year 7 history homework to build a castle. But apart from that, yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
Good.
Yes, right, folks. So I have here today with me Dr. Robin Hayward, and they are a science communicator, designer, and forest ecologist. Their research into degradation and restoration of forest ecosystems has taken them around the world, from the tops of the tropical rainforest canopies to planting new trees in the frosty soils of Yorkshire. Don't underestimate or undercook the frosty soils of Yorkshire. Gorgeous place. Their favourite part of her job is sharing the joys and science and nature with communities outside of academia, which she does through media, social media, art, and live performance. So, folks, as you know, if you know me, that's something we've got in common as well. So Robin has also been working on resources to improve safety, equity, inclusion for LGBTQ plus field workers as part of a team based at University of Leeds. Yeah. I tell you what, you apart from the specifics, forest ecology and that kind of stuff like that, you literally could swap my name out for yours, change forest ecology to climate, and we pretty much got a very similar bio there.
Yeah, I think so. I think we're both just doing far too much. Normally, if someone asks me in real time kind of what I do and I don't have a chance to write a little bio thing, I just panic and say trees. And that's the whole thing. Let's do trees. I mean, we see if they look vaguely interested in that, and then I'll ramble at them for an hour, and I guess that's the plan now.
You're a tree hugger. Yeah, well, it's called measuring the girth of a tree, but yes, I am a tree hugger, yes.
I did do a talk last year now at the Royal Institution about the best trees in the world to hug. So I got paid to do that as my job, to actually go and tell people about the most huggable trees in the world. And not just to do it, but to do the analysis behind the talk as well. So I got to sit down and go through trees in a semi-structured kind of pseudo-scientific manner. But I wrote code for it to do the analysis, so I think it counts.
This is taking tree hugging to a whole new level. It's like get your analysis in it and coding as well, folks. So you know what? If you think if you're trying to get one over and trying to kind of get a dig in or an insult in when you call people like us a tree hugger, you're not insulting us. You're complimenting us. All right. So
absolutely,
it
is one of the main things on my CV as well. I think
tree hugger.
I have hugged thousands of trees in my life, and genuinely as well, because a lot of science, you kind of think, oh, it's going to be these really complex techniques we're doing all the time. But for the kind of work that I do, a lot of the stuff before you get onto the statistical analysis and kind of all the high level bits is you literally go to a forest with a tape measure, and you've got to put that tape measure around the tree somehow to measure how big it is. So just a big hug, absolutely lovely. And you do get your favorites. The barks feel different. Like there's something to it.
Yeah, right. Okay. Now this is weird. I've not even done the staple start of the chats yet. I've not done asked you about your drink. I've not asked you about your location. I'm going to go straight. This is a record. We are 3 minutes 53 seconds in. I'm going to go into a jog queue over the brew already because, believe it or not, you're saying what you're saying, right? So Frances, one of the questions she's asked, I had this one in reserve in case we had time, but I just have to ask this now. So therefore, what is your favorite? And I'm going to spin this. What is your favorite native or exotic tree to hug, and why?
Oh, fantastic! I mean, I've got these, and I've got them kind of. I think I can say peer reviewed on this, to be honest, considering some of the people in that audience for that presentation. Maybe not the most rigorous as some things. So one thing to clarify for this: I'm based in the UK. a lot of the time, especially in the kind of online discussions that I end up in a lot of the time, people don't say where they're from when they're talking about natives and exotics. And it's one of my real bugbears. So especially because, unfortunately, as the British, we do have a long history of colonialism and either exporting or importing stuff.
Indeed.
A lot of the time when we talk about kind of these terrible invasive species that have come from Britain because we felt homesick, we forget that actually if you're talking to someone who is currently in Britain, they are our native species and they can be quite friendly. So that's kind of a bit of disclaimer, but we're talking in a very geographically distinct thing for this talk.
I was saying.
But yeah, native is also just a tricky word for trees because things move around so much. I would say beech, maybe.
Beech tree.
For hugging. I wouldn't say it's my favorite overall, but it's got this lovely smooth bark. It's about the right size. It's very kind of it's a huggable feeling. I think it's a really nice one for our natives. And, it's been around in the UK for a very, very long time. You get big stands of beech woodlands because I think it was used in shipbuilding and all sorts of stuff. Like you would plant a beech woodland. And I think maybe also like a common hunting forest kind of tree for when the gentry would want to go and hunt. So, I mean, they can't be blamed for that association, but they're lovely little trees. Or lovely big trees in a lot of cases. Exotic trees, it's a little bit more tricky because there are some really incredible things out there. And like in terms of exotic ones you see around the UK a lot of the time, redwoods, fantastic. They were all brought over about 200 years ago because the Victorians loved them. And they're squishy. I don't know if you knew this. Squishy trees.
That is so funny because I actually have a pic. I'll get it up because we're not recording a video today, folks. But for Robin's benefit, I'll get up for them the picture of me. I don't know actually if I can get that picture. If I can find it after we finish recording, I'll find it. But there's a picture of me and my wife actually trying to hug a redwood in California, and of course we can't because it's huge. So it's just like.
Yeah.
Yes, but it's funny. I only saw that picture the other day. Yeah, they are massive. But Francis, thank you. I wasn't expecting to. That was my backup question, and B, that's probably the quickest jog you we've ever had. Speaking of your brew, then what do you tend to go for when if you're going to go sit in a chat at a coffee house with your friends or something, or you're having a break from organising conferences or something? What do you usually ask for at the barista?
This is a big question, and if I'm going out for a coffee or a hot drink or something in a cafe, the answer is generally the fun thing that I can't do at home very easily. So it's not even about the thing that I want most at any given time. Like 9 times out of 10, if I'm at home, it's just black coffee or a cup of tea or something, and we'll get on to what I've got in my cup today. But if I'm out at a coffee shop, it'll be the brightly colourful thing, or the matcha with the lavender syrup is sometimes good. I've had that recently.
Oh, yes.
Very nice. But, like the fancy thing, the treat yourself kind of thing. Then what I've got today in my lovely mug it's dragon wing tea from the Hebden Tea Co. No dragons harmed in the making of.
Dragon wing tea from the Hebden Tea Co. So,
I do have my little packet of it here. So I can tell you what's actually in it if you like.
Yeah, go for it.
So it's a green and white tea blend. So it's a blend of sencha and kukicha, palmitan dragon fruit pieces, some lemongrass, some freeze-dried kiwi, and some raspberry pieces, and pomegranate arils, which is very exciting. So arils, if you're not aware, for anyone who's not aware, is a kind of that fleshy covering of the seed, and it's not quite a fruit.
Right.
So it's that, like, if you think of an open pomegranate, it's the bit around the actual pippy seed.
Okay, yeah, I can picture it. Yeah. Cool. So I imagine that would make a good infusion.
Oh, it's
that
delightful.
Kind of bit around, because usually those bits usually get hacked off, cleaned off, washed away, but they usually contain the most, nutrients and things like that. Okay, interesting. Right. So there you go, folks. We're going to check that out, and we'll put that on the Coffee and Geography interactive map. for listeners if they so wish, and teachers who've been using the map who I've been hearing want to test the look at the geographical spread of these things and whether they're sustainable or not. There we go. Right, so your location then, Robin, so you're currently in kind of like the western part of Leeds, so up in Yorkshire. So folks, if you're not familiar of the United Kingdom, if you just picture kind of roughly a map in your head, if you go kind of like in the center where you might have the fattest bit, the bit where it's the furthest away from all the other parts of UK, and you go kind of maybe halfway between there and Scotland, north, that's pretty much where Leeds is, kind of like in central England, central North England, but not, I don't know. I've spoken to a few people in Leeds who say, oh, Leeds is definitely north. It is like north as anything, and Sheffield, and it's like, it's north than Sheffield, it's definitely north. But some people I speak to, it's like, well, I don't feel northern. We're not like the folks up in the Scottish borders and Newcastle. So, but my point of that little kind of pointless thing I just said basically was the question I like to ask people, Robin, is how do you feel that your identity as it is today is formulated by the places that you have been, you've lived, you've experienced? So obviously you've done a lot of traveling around the world as well. So for Robin Hayward of 2026, what part of them is I feel like this part of Yorkshire is in me, or this, and plus this, thinking of your brew, this bit of mixed ingredient of when I went traveling, and this is what's formulated me today. It's a very tough question, but a lot of people like answering this one because they get to think about what's made up the ingredients that have made them up today.
Oh, absolutely. It is a big question. I think we could spend the rest of the time on it, to be honest, because everywhere we go is going to have some kind of impact on the way we live, right? So what I will say is, for me, a lot of where I've wanted to live in my life has actually been dictated by kind of the shape of the landscape and the feeling of it. So I grew up on Dartmoor, so I'm kind of, in my soul, I'm attracted to like those rocky, hilly spaces. And funnily enough, haven't ended up studying them at all. But kind of that moorland kind of idea. So I moved away from Dartmoor when I was 18. I moved to York, so already up into Yorkshire, trying to be kind of out on the York moors. Then I've kind of jumped over to Scotland, where again, there's this wonderful kind of moorland landscape. And then after that, back down to Yorkshire again. And as a sneak preview, back up to Scotland again soon. So it's this kind of bouncing back and forth and feeling that joy in that landscape and the wilderness of it. And I think more than anything, something that I realized a lot while working in forests for long periods of times is that horizon as well. The fact that you have this kind of rolling horizon that goes all the way out to the sea a lot of the time, just kind of glimpsed in there, and being able to have that space and that feeling of freedom. For a long time, I thought that was kind of an attraction to natural spaces, but actually kind of, I lived in a forest for 6 months, and that thing of, if your horizon's always that close, while trees, I will say, are much better than buildings, I did start to feel that kind of like, that desperation of just like, oh, I need to get out, I need to see some rolling hills, some British countryside. So it's a really, really weird thing. Yeah.
Wow, that's that. I've seen many. I just want to kind of like go on the hook on what you call about horizons and things like that. So over, in here in Norfolk, I suppose we've got the equivalent of big skies here. We've got undulating hills and whatnot, but really, you go into the Norfolk, Suffolk countryside, you can see a hell of a lot of sky. But I identify quite a lot with mountainous terrain and rolling terrain, but where you can see a vast distance, so that's why I connect quite a lot with places like Bozeman in Montana, where our family, my in-laws have a house, and why, when I was a kid, I used to absolutely adore going up to places like the Lake District, and why I used to take kids from around Norfolk up to the Yorkshire Dales, to Malham Tarn and places like that, because it's a landscape that many of the kids down at this part of England just don't get to experience, and I do have an affinity for that landscape. I tell you what, standing on the top of Malham Tarn and then looking south, so you're looking across to Malham, way into the distance into the Yorkshire Dales, it is breathtaking. It is absolutely breathtaking. It's one of my favourite views in the entire country, and so I can definitely feel like see what you mean about those horizons and how if you don't have those horizons, they can be quite claustrophobic. So, but a question I want to ask you then, because you alluded to it then, which I thought was really intriguing, was how visceral is that feeling then? So say if you only ever had two options, you either have a horizon which is blocked by buildings. I mean, the answer is probably going to be obvious, but I'm going to ask it anyway for the purposes of people hearing it, right? You're blocked horizons because of man-made infrastructure, buildings, etc., and you've got a blocked horizon because you're completely surrounded by a forest, by trees, whatever. You know, the feeling in your soul must be completely different between the two, I imagine.
Oh,
even though you yearn for those horizons, I suppose you could live with at least the trees.
It's funny you say that because it should be a really obvious kind of thing, but of course I go for the trees like 100 times out of 100.
Yeah.
But it kind of depends how long for. Like if it's for life, are there other people in those trees? I think something that I've learned to value more and more, kind of over time, and especially kind of going beyond maybe the most heavily fieldwork oriented bit of my life. Like I used to love kind of going out for long isolated periods, kind of spending these times. But wonderful thing about buildings is they're full of people and they're full of interaction and that like the humanity of it all. And kind of the more I go on, like I can do trees for a while, but eventually I want to come back, I want to tell stories, I want to do the interactions and like that's the bit that really calls to me these days. And yeah, I guess it might be similar for you, but it's that like talking to people. That's what we're doing here. It's great. Maybe if I had Wi-Fi and a podcast up a tree. But it's
you know what? I think you've hit the nail on the head. I adore squirreling myself away sometimes, but I can't. I describe myself as an extroverted introvert, so I'm naturally introverted, where I just want to. I like my own company. I kind of will. With my ADHD, I am so much easier for me to hyper focus if I'm in my own space, my own little bubble and whatnot like that. But I get exhausted by that very quickly, and I feel the need for interaction. But interaction that I am comfortable with, not necessarily in terms of the people I'm with, although that is a big part of it. You know, people like you, similar, we can geek out together and stuff like that. That I really enjoy. It's like if I find my people, quote unquote, who I can geek out with, not just on like an academic kind of level, but also on a personal level as well, where I can talk about intellectual things through lived experience as well. That I really, really, really love. But I just love talking. It's probably the reason why I was a teacher for so many years, is because I just love to not just dispense with knowledge, but I love listening to what people think about that and what they think their take on that knowledge is, or their experiences of a similar different kind of knowledge. So if I don't get that fix every now and then, I think that the kind of like my tendency to want to be by myself and isolate myself sometimes can become very toxic very quickly, probably, and very harmful. So yeah, it's you saying that it's really made me think about that more than I ever have, really. Interesting.
Fantastic. Well, I mean, I think it sounds like we're very similar in a lot of ways on this kind of thing.
Yeah, I would say so. And what you've put in your bio, which is really intriguing to me, you love to engage and share these kind of things through social media, art, and live performance. And that's exactly. I mean, I'm probably art not so much. Although I suppose I would classify my art would be in the way that I present my material through like presentations and stuff like that. Like I can't do a dull PowerPoint. It has to be full of, it's got to be very, very visual. So I guess that's my art. But for life before, I do poetry and stuff like that. And when I do teach meets, it's usually through poetry or performance rather than just a simple lecture. And social media, I mean, I've got a project on the go, which I will mention it because by the time this recording goes out, I should have done it by then. But I've been because I'm a Trekkie. I've got my new Star Trek uniform for Star Trek Academy, and I'm now making geography videos, but through the guise of an exogeographer lecturer at Starfleet Academy. So it's going to have a sci-fi twist to it. So I'm going to teach geography through sci-fi. Why I do this to myself, Robin, I don't know. But you said it yourself before we started recording. Yeah, but that's what you. But that's what we said before we started recording. Is like, why do we do this to ourselves? It's like, do we have any time? You know, it's like because we just love it so much.
Yeah, it's so joyful, I think, is the key thing, and it wraps you back into community, and it lets you do something through a lens that's just a little bit more, I'm going to say magical, even though it's sci-fi, but the distinction's kind of there. But like that idea of, you see something that quite often in a world where we do these things professionally, we're quite tempted to wrap it into this thing of, well, it's got to be very serious all the time because we're doing it really well.
Yeah.
And then I mean, go down with a tricorder and measure things up, and kind of do a bit of
the techno
just a little bit of it. You got to have the techno babble down. It makes it so much happier as a way to share it with people. It brings people in who might not otherwise care about the general bit of it at the beginning. So I love it.
Yeah, I've got my like little starships all over the place, and there was one time where when I was teaching, I actually created a whole lesson on disaster management using Thunderbirds.
Amazing.
So it was basically I had I did a whole thing where they were in groups of 4 because they didn't need Gordon in Thunderbird 4 because there wasn't any water involved. But anyway, so they had a group where someone was the communications officer, which is John in Thunderbird 5. Someone was like the scout looking at the lay of the land, where that was Scott in Thunderbird 1, and then someone had to think about what equipment needed to get there. That was Virgil in Thunderbird 2. I don't know what, but you're right. It's making it fun because, and I think that's why, that's. I can't take my job too seriously. I do take it seriously in terms of its importance, but I can't. The pedagogy of it, I can't take seriously. I'd go crazy.
I don't think you should either.
No, I'd go nuts, especially with eco anxiety and everything like that.
Like anything in kind of the eco and climate and environment kind of realm, you can't stay too serious about it too long. Like it does need to get serious sometimes, but you need that constant like shifting in how you express stuff as well. Like if you're always serious, people just go numb to it, and you kind of need that. Sometimes finding joy, sometimes being like, no, but it is serious, and balancing that just right is what stops it from being like a multi-decade problem that people stop caring about after the first 2 months.
No, you're spot on there. You're absolutely spot on. So we'll pivot therefore quite naturally onto the subject that you did for your PhD and what you've built on since then. So you said here that your PhD was in the ecology of trees in the Malaysian rainforest and the ways of which they've been influenced across generations by selective logging and restoration efforts. So I think listeners would be absolutely really intrigued to hear about kind of like, what you experienced, what you found out in that respect, and kind of like the kind of how your work has developed since doing your PhD, really, especially, one of the questions we've got coming up is really interesting about, which is very, very similar about forest management. So tell us a little bit about your PhD, what it was all about. And I know it's a lot, but, summarize your PhD in just 10 minutes for me.
I tell you what, just right at the end of my PhD, one of my supervisors did say I should draw it all as a single infographic. And that's a similar level of just like, just distill this entire PhD thesis into a single figure. And to be fair, I'm really pleased with what I came up with. But fundamentally, what I did for 4 years of my life is heading out to Malaysia and seeing how this effect of logging that took place about 30 years ago was making an impact on what we see today. So the key difference between maybe what a lot of people listening will imagine as logging and deforestation versus what actually happens across a lot of the tropics is when we think of it in our minds, especially from kind of a European lens, we think of like this clear fell, everything cut down, like just fields of stumps essentially, right? Where like everything's been taken out. And what happens across 95% of all logging in the tropics is this thing called selective logging, where there's this huge diversity of trees. Not all of it's going to be good for timber, not all of it's going to be good for paper. Like you don't want to actually take out everything anyway. So you maybe only take out like 5, 10, 20 trees per 100 meter by 100 meter area. Okay. And so you actually leave a lot of your forest standing. And the idea behind this is that, you give it 20 years or so and you've got a forest again. It just kind of ticks on and you're not really destroying anything. So that's the theory. And in reality, a lot of the time, that means you can come back and log it again in 20 years. So you have this sequential kind of degradation of an environment over really long time periods. And so it obviously requires study to understand, well, what's actually happening here? Is it recovering? What do we do? And more to the point, if we want to leave it again for much longer time periods, other things we do to try and plant new trees in those spaces and really kind of help it heal faster, are they working? So my PhD was looking at, well, is it all working? So we had in this one Malaysian rainforest, an area that was never logged at all, perfect, happy rainforest doing its thing. We had an area that was logged and then just left alone to kind of do what it will do. And then we had an area that kind of 5 years or so after logging, people came in and were like, okay, we're going to cut back the vines that are kind of coming over and taking over from the trees. We're going to plant in some new trees of the same kind of species, dot them around the landscape and try and fill in the gaps. So that was the setup. And then, you know, roll on 30 years or so for me to come along and start hugging all those trees and using the tape measure and doing some stats. And I come around and measure them all, see what species we've got there and see what's going on. And it was really, really interesting because you kind of see this very positive effect of people planting stuff and like the carbon's coming back much better where we were trying to help again. But what we were seeing was, especially over, I did kind of a 2-year study of recording new seedlings that were coming from these replanted trees. And they just didn't survive as well while we've been trying to help out. The stuff that was left to recover naturally was the stuff that was kind of creating multi-generational like recovery within the system rather than just like one generation of trees recovering. Anyway, I realize I've rambled on and on. Like you've been lucky not to get 4 years worth of this, to be honest. But it's, I hope that's an interesting quick summary or quickish summary.
No, it really, really is, and it kind of yeah, and a lot of the people listening to this are educators themselves. Probably mostly the geography educators in the UK, but I know there's a lot of people outside the UK listening to this as well. And I think that there's a lot of from when I used to teach geography anyway. You know, there was a lack of nuance to the issue. I think projected in GCSE textbooks. You know, GCSE focuses what they study at high school for their qualifications, and I think it was very, very important to think that actually we're going to need these kind of like really long longitudinal studies to see what really is taking place. And like 4 years of a PhD, you could probably only scratch the surface, I imagine, as well, just to kind of really. You must have looked quite a fair back into also maybe. I mean, these projects you were involved with, these studies that you're involved with, were you like coming in kind of midway or and then looking back to see what's gone on historically as well? Did you have to kind of like see where it fit into a timeline of because I can't imagine that, as I say, when you're doing like trees and things like that, that 4 years is enough time to see everything you need to see, really.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. You're looking at kind of multi-decades for a generation of trees to just kind of get from the forest floor to the canopy. So the stuff that I'm looking at is a flash in the pan. And yeah, I think it's really interesting to kind of see which position you're able to take in the space of 4 years. Realistically, I came into an existing plot network. So something that had been set up as kind of this is our sampling structure for how we're going to attempt to record this forest. And I came into something that had been measured a couple of times previously over the preceding decade, but they had been looking at mostly carbon and kind of these ideas of like the big trees, a few different kind of species assessments, but it's a lot of work and kind of they don't happen that frequently. So I came into this plot network and was able to do one chapter of my PhD really focusing on adding something to that and doing these kind of large scale stems of like what you see to be a proper big tree. And remeasuring some of that stuff. And then the kind of stuff I was talking about, the survival of the next generation on, the seedlings, that's kind of the new bit that I was setting up. And so within or nearby to these existing plots, what I would do is I would set up my own slightly smaller plots, but would look at individual seedlings and kind of how a single generation that all kind of fruited in about 1 year in, I want to say 2019, how that generation is going to grow over the next how many years it is that we can study them for. So I set up this fresh plot network inside an existing one to kind of add that extra bit of detail. And then, of course, could never return to it because COVID happened immediately after through the second half of my PhD.
Of course, yeah.
But was very lucky to have really incredible collaborators on the ground in Malaysia who were able to carry on the work during that lockdown period and just go out and remeasure those seedlings kind of every couple of months. And I believe that plot network is still in use now by presumably another PhD student, but hopefully multiple academics. And once you've got that data set, you can start iteratively kind of connecting on other things and maybe studying things that aren't plants at all. Maybe it becomes useful to thinking about what we call seed predators. So not predators as most people think of them, but like a pig or a monkey or something that is eating all those seeds before they turn into trees.
Yeah. Or my kids are seed predators when it comes to the garden. For instance, and I was like, don't go on that piece of. Oh, too late. But yeah, and I'm very, very pleased to hear that, really, because people have said to me so many times, like, Kit, why, you've done enough work to do a couple of PhDs over, why haven't you done a PhD yet? And I'm just so worried of, you hear a lot of stories about PhDs being very ephemeral. They're flash in the pans. They don't have much legacy, don't have much influence on action and policy, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So if I want to do anything like that, I'd want it to be meaningful and have not legacy in terms of my legacy, but legacy as in it has real world impacts that people can improve upon, can make better, can actually really put application to it, that where I don't have my other skill to that. So it's really, really pleasing to hear that it sounds like the work that you've done has got, has tied into a legacy, not just from you, but you've been part of what seems to be something that's been taking place in the past and into the future. And as you say, perhaps another PhD student has taken it on. So that's really pleasing to hear, because that must feel fulfilling as well to think, well, I really enjoyed this 4 years, and I don't think on a wider impact it's been wasted either. So that's really, really pleasing to hear.
It's one of those real perks of going to an existing and established field site. So somewhere that has been running for a couple of decades already and is doing various bits and pieces, and there'll be scientists staying there all the time. Like that turnover and that continuous iteration of what's being studied and these long-term studies really does mean that you get a little bit more out of it. But the flip side of that is you're studying the same place. And so we get these huge biases in particularly tropical science, where like there's a few really well set up places in a few countries that admittedly at the moment tend to work really well with Britain and America. So there's political elements there about where it gets studied. And so while you kind of get the longer term impact out of this kind of thing, you also do want people to be taking that punt and doing a bit of a gamble of setting up new stuff that might be fast for plan and go nowhere. And it's a real struggle. So I think it's now on institutions to make sure they've got the backup for people who are doing the research to be like, okay, whose job is it to make sure this at least gets into policy, even if it doesn't become a paper or something that the academic themselves would have to write. It is an ongoing big question, I think.
Yeah, and I might have to, if I am tempted, and I might have to pick your brains a bit later on.
I highly recommend it for the title. There's a lot of as you say, nuance to whether you want to do one. But
and you know what,
being able to say it's doctor actually sometimes is pretty great.
And I love that on your social media, by the way. Yeah, so I just want to get a PhD just to get one of your pins, basically.
Well, I will say, if you're in the sci-fi spaces, I'm trying to break into the Doctor Who community. I think it's Doctor Actually pins on Doctor Who cosplayers is a real mood, especially with a lot of non-binariness of the Doctor now. Okay.
Shout out to my ex-university mate who I don't speak to anymore. I went to UEA with him at the same time. He did creative writing, and that's Matt Smith.
Oh,
I don't speak to him anymore, and I already told him. I think the last time I heard from him was when I told him that David Tennant was a better doctor.
Well, I would say David Tennant is my doctor. So
what? So, folks, and I just want to give a shout out back to my wonderful friend, geography teacher in Northern Ireland, Alistair Hamill. Folks, please go and listen to our special episode last season. So it was episode 10 of season 5, where he talked about he did this fantastic project with his students and with students from another school, where they went around and they measured the trees around Lurgan to kind of like, they literally went around hugging the trees to kind of estimate their shade potential, cover, how much carbon they're sequestering and stuff like that. And and it actually has gone and got the attention of the council, which is brilliant. So folks, so Alistair, I know you're listening, Alistair, because you do listen to these. Alistair, why don't you go back to one of those kids who helped you out and thinking, you know what, you might be able to do a PhD on the kind of like based off the work you did at high school with me, you know, because yeah, that would have some impact. Right, so here's a question then. Here's France's original question I was going to give to you, and it just seems like the perfect time to ask it now, Robin. So Francis says, for a jog queue over a brew, what role do Indigenous people play in the management of rainforests? Are there any similarities or differences between how these forests are managed there and in the UK? So yeah, any insights on those really? I mean, there could be multiple, again, could go on forever for this, but any particular examples you feel are worth highlighting there about the difference in management of rainforests?
Yeah, I mean, it's a huge question. So I mean, I would say like rainforests are all over the place. Like we've even got some in the UK, but
temperate rainforests,
even just thinking around like tropical rainforests, which is what most people imagine, like the variety of people's communities, how you interact with forests, and even the way those forests can be interacted with based on their own ecologies is going to vary hugely. And as someone who very much studied the forest and tree side of this and their ecology rather than kind of the interaction with people, I'm maybe a little bit out of my depth. However, I will say that like the way that people generally interact with forests is hugely important. And kind of we often think about people exploiting forests. We think about people caring for them. A lot of the time there is kind of this give and take and a lot of different ways that people interact, and it's very easy to overly praise or overly demonize them. Like a lot of the time we will kind of split it into a very black and white kind of concept there. So I think the question really is going to be kind of how do we interact with trees and where does that go from here? Because like it's changing all the time. Like increasingly we're mechanizing use of forests and clearing them or extracting resources from differently. And things like, so my PhD on selective logging, for example, people have been selectively cutting out bits of a forest and using it for ages. Like I was working on a site in Indonesia back during my master's where basically people were taking firewood from the forests and using like these very simple resources that you don't really think is going to have much of an effect. But I was climbing up trees and seeing what was at the top, and I was able to see that level of disturbance going on in the canopy, even when nothing was being done to the canopy. And that was this very small scale thing that you might think is a much more traditional use of the forest. So yeah, I'm rambling a little bit without a huge amount of direction on this one, I do think. But I mean, there's also that thing of local people often do know a lot of things best. So we still rely within the sciences a lot on these kind of assumptions made by local people, and slowly we test them and they work sometimes, they don't work in other times. But your local land managers who've come up through a background of conservation management, whether that is taught by parents and ancestors through, or taught by kind of your local wildlife group that might just have like oh yeah, someone told me this 50 years ago and I still do it. Like that's often really useful knowledge to have, just that understanding of the trees and what you can do in a less scientifically rigorous way. And I think we do tend to mechanize things a bit more in the UK and like really do these broad sweeping things, maybe come down from government and where the resources are. But ultimately, a lot of the time, the people on the ground are still using traditional knowledge for a lot of things, and it comes with a huge range of benefits.
You know what? I really want to get someone from the Forestry Commission actually on here, and I want to ask them about like to what extent do you actually, you know, it's rather than just getting people sent in from centralized office saying this is what we need to do. Like, how do you actually like have advisors, workers, people who, like, because we just got Thetford Forest like right up the road, and you know, and it's which is a huge man-made plantation, and you know, but to what extent are they using people who have got generations of experience where their family worked on the land for, ever since it was Breckland, before the first trees have been planted. To what extent do they do that? I really would like to ask that question of them. So
yeah, I mean, I will say they do have a lot of experts from a lot of backgrounds working for them. And
of course,
it's a lot of the time that people on the ground have like these backgrounds about knowledge, either through apprenticeships or through occasionally generational things, or some people will come into it through farming as well, so that understanding of the land and kind of getting interested in these ways. But then from like the scientific side of things, like at the University of Leeds, the team that I'm currently part of is looking at, well, we created a research woodland 3 years ago. It's still very much small sticks in the field, but as it grows, we're asking these questions and trying to learn more and more about the best ways to do stuff. So it's kind of that, a lot of the time when we've been starting with this, we have been using a lot of relatively traditional knowledge or stuff that's been built up over the generations. And then it's mostly refining it and kind of figuring out how we can tweak it. So stuff that you might know, but like, oh, you plant this thing. Okay, but why do we plant this thing?
Yeah.
And it's that little bit of a tweak that you start realizing, okay, these are the underlying processes. And I think that's true for a lot of geography generally. But we tend to have a connection to the land in some way through kind of history and like iterative stuff over time. But it's when you start looking at it with modern scientific techniques, with modern statistics, and kind of like ecology's jumped hugely in the last 30 years once kind of computerized statistics came in to be able to let us do some new tests. But yeah, that stuff we can do now is looking at, the microbiome of the soil. And if we've got this whole network of trees where we know where every single one is, how's this one affecting this one over here? And that level of extra detail is something you couldn't have got previously. And that expertise really is baked into a lot of these things. And even just what we planted, we were looking at a lot of traditional knowledge, but also a tool called the ESC criteria, which I can't remember what ESC stands for, spelled ESC. But it tells you what trees are suitable for different areas within the UK. And it will tell you kind of if they're going to remain suitable with current models of climate change. So planting for a climate that's going to be different 50 or 100 years into the future, and might have different water running through your field or different soil. Maybe the S is a soil classification, actually. Maybe that's what it is.
Ecological site qualification. That's it. Yeah, you're right.
Some of that, yeah.
Yeah, a system of tool using Great Britain to select tree species. Yeah, tree species ecologically suited to specific sites based on six key criteria: 4 climatic and 2 soil. Yeah, okay. Oh, excellent. Okay, okay. Yeah. I know there'll be some people who've pricked their ears up on that one to take a look at that. That's brilliant insight. Now, why is the time running out so quickly? I get such deepness. I know. Right, so let's do this little silly thing now. Before we close off. So we're going to do a new thing, folks, called grounds for debate. And I haven't yet set up a new thing, but I'll do this. There you go. I don't know. I don't know why the gong I just chose the gong. I had some options. I chose that one. Right. You ready for this? Now you can only pick this. You might surprise me, but I think I know what you're going to pick. Right. So here's the thing that me and you're going to debate, and I'll play devil's advocate even if I agree with you. Right. So this is this. So if you were given limited resources and you could only prioritize one, right? Would you prioritize the global conservation of the boreal forest or the tropical forest? If we had resources to kind of really save and manage and conserve one of them, and the other one we're just going to have to let go or just leave to the fate, tropical or boreal. And as I say, I have my own opinions, but I'll play devil's advocate for the sake of the debate. So what do you think? I mean, I know you're experiencing tropical. Are you going to stick with that?
Oh, it's so interesting. How long do we have for this debate? It's not going to be.
I know. I've only given us 5 minutes because it's because the conversation's been really good. So.
Okay, I will go for tropical. Go for it.
All right. Okay. So convince me, because I think it's the boreal forest. Then here goes my drama coming out now.
Maybe I think it's boreal now. No, I think It's a very easy argument to make that the tropical side of things should be conserved. It's the most biodiverse place on the planet. All that sunlight coming in at the equator is going to drive these biological systems. This huge diversity of stuff. It's locking down carbon faster than any other forest ecosystem in the world. It's kind of got this non-seasonal growth as well. So it's growing constantly through the year, locking down these things. It's creating much more land. It is creating its own weather for that land. So if you take away all of that forest, the rain stops across the equator, essentially. Like, these trees are increasing the rain that is fueling crops, which then fuel development. And you just need that to kind of continue people being able to live their lives in huge areas of the world.
Yeah, well, I mean, you talk about, I don't want to make this too realistic, but I'm going to anyway. So it's so hard because I do agree with you. But then again, I know for a fact that the forest in that Arctic circle, the boreal circle, that does sequester, or it stores, shall I say, a third of the world's carbon. So if that gets destroyed, burned, if we don't protect that can cause a tipping point. And I know that the tropical rainforest is also a tipping point there, but you've already got management that's taking place there. You've already got human interference. You've already got mechanisms that's taking place. The boreal forest is relatively untouched. There's still some human interaction there, and at the moment we've got this potential of keeping all of this carbon, all of this methane under the permafrost protected. As soon as those trees are gone, you're going to flip multiple tipping points, so that's permafrost melting, releasing methane, which is more potent than carbon dioxide, but 1/3 of the store, so I honestly think that this preventing this kind of like massive explosion of carbon leakage completely dwarfs anything you could potentially say from tropical forests, really.
I mean, I think I've got to agree on the keeping methane in the ground. That seems really logical, and that kind of ties into a lot of protecting peatlands as well. But it doesn't necessarily link 100% to that protection of the forests. And kind of if you're really dealing with this kind of thing and thinking of all the different knock-ons, maybe there is some way that we can keep that ground frozen. But if you look at, say, the albedo of the poles, most of that at the moment, lovely amounts of snow. But then you've got these lovely dark green trees that are absorbing all that energy from the sun and not reflecting it back out to space. So surely we want to get rid of that kind of darker color that the trees would be. So I don't know if I necessarily 100% believe that. I want to keep all the trees.
Okay. Right, I'm going to use the gong to make the end. Right, folks, you decide, right? If you've listened to this podcast, you can, I don't know, I haven't made a hashtag for it. You could just hashtag coffee jog pod, right? We're now chat. But what do you think? If you only had one choice, because I was playing devil's advocate. There is nothing that Robin said that I didn't disagree with, and what I said,
you didn't disagree with.
See, now I'm getting that I agreed with everything that you said, and we've got to do everything we can for both these fantastic ecosystems. So, but what do you think if you only had one choice? And Robin and I know that life is not binary. It doesn't work that way. But let's just pretend, right, that you only could do one or the other.
Bugbears. It is worth saying that a lot of the time, one of the things that's used within conservation to minimize our ability to actually do stuff about the world is people say, well, do you want to solve climate change or do you want to solve healthcare or education?
Yes.
And they kind of assume it's like you can choose one. And actually, you can do a load of things on a sliding scale. A lot of the time, things are complementary. And so while I recognise the fun of the debate, it's always worth saying at every opportunity we get that actually, you can do multiple things, and it's great. And within the work that I do creating woodlands as well, we often get that idea of like, oh, you're creating one for biodiversity. Why aren't you focusing on carbon, or why aren't you doing a fruit orchard or something that serves the local community?
All the above.
That as well. It's great. There's so many opportunities here. So yes, absolutely, the debate is great, but let's do them all. It's absolutely
and that's why this new feature, grounds for debate, is just completely tongue in cheek. It's complete because you're absolutely right. I mean, that's why I make the whole climate change is a school safeguarding issue, because when schools come back to me and they say, Kit, we don't have the time, we've got to focus on the curriculum, we've got to focus on this, that, and the other. I said, no, I'm sorry. You give me 15 minutes of you. I will demonstrate to you while dealing with climate change, building climate resilience and literacy in your school with your students is beneficial to everything else you're trying to do for them. So
yeah, totally cross-curricular as well.
Yeah. Right. The last thing to do then, Robin, is to link you with our previous guest, which was Omar, and with We Are All Geographers. So Omar had to talk about the word adaptation. No, not adaptation. That was the word that Gadfly did. So what was it that... See, I've completely lost it now already. So, Kit. I'm not editing this out because I've got to own it. Right, denialism. Right, Gadfly gave Omar denialism to talk about for 30 seconds. When he did that, he chose the word, and I can't believe this, it's been too easy so far, camouflage for you. Camouflage. So Dr. Robin Hayward, you've got to speak about the word camouflage for 30 seconds, however you so wish. I think you've got an easy win here. So I'm just going to start timer straight away. 30 seconds on the word camouflage. Go.
Incredible. I mean, camouflage is so baked into what I do with ecology. It is one of the key adaptations things use to survive, to not be seen, to fit in. There was one time a little lizard jumped at me out of a tree and I'd never seen it, was like right there, just like flying around in the canopy. Great times. But I think, there's loads of really social elements of camouflage as well that are super, super interesting, and how we use it to camouflage in society and blend in and do lots of different things, which is a huge part of geography as well. So the idea of how people fit into different cultures, adapt, and kind of make themselves heard or seen, but in a way that matches what else is around them and what's going on, to cause change. I don't actually know how long 30 seconds is. Is that what's it?
No, I was so thrown by the fact that Omar was given denialism, which was perfect. Well, Gadfly was given adaptation, which is perfect with regards to the work that they've been doing in terms of aquatic invasive species and stuff like that. Omar was given denialism, which is perfect because he works on decolonizing things in paleontology, and it was just so simple for him to do like that. You were given the word camouflage, and I am not telling any of you who is the next guest, and yet you're just nailing it. So I forgot to start the timer because I was just like, So, you don't know who the next guest is, Robin. So what would you like them to do?
Oh, it's so tempting, because the one thing you won't do is do another tree person. So I could just do something hyper specific into trees and forests. I'm going to go clay.
Perfect. We'll do clay. Yeah. How's this for specificness, right? So it was Akiko Tomitaka. Crikey, that was back in season 3. She used the word kurishio, which is Japanese for black stream. So if you think that anything specific, how's that? And who was the person who had to do that? Jenny, but my ex-colleague at UEA, Jenny Barkley, had to try that one. She's a volcanologist.
So that's there you go. Though, because volcanic flows and stuff, very much.
I think that's where she went. I think that's where she went. Yeah, like lava flows, mud flows, lahars, and that kind of stuff. Anyway. Yeah. Robin, this was a fantastic discussion, and I would love people to connect with you and the work that you're doing. So where can people find you on things like social media, etc., etc.?
I'm basically everywhere that I feel okay to be, and I'm normally Canopy Robin. So Canopy Robin across TikTok, Instagram, Threads, LinkedIn, Storygraph, whatever it is you fancy finding me on. On Blue Sky, I'm at canopyrobin.com. I think on Mastodon, I'm at canopyrobin.mastodon social, whatever the prime instance is.
Search for you find it, yeah.
Everywhere,
yeah. And you're on LinkedIn as well, yeah. I love that, see your pictures, especially, in your LinkedIn where you're doing all your sci-comm stuff as well. It's always a joy to watch. And there's so many other things we didn't get to chat about, which, maybe we'll have you back on one time. And because, the whole, we didn't even get to talk about queerness in nature and stuff like that, which I know is you're very, very keen on, and how I see my transness in nature as well, So, And we've got some people who listen to this podcast who are actually trying to diversify and be more inclusive with their fieldwork. And they might be disappointed that I, as the host, didn't manage to get us on that topic. So we might have to have you back.
The very quick plug that I'll do for them then is inclusivefieldwork.leeds.ac.uk. The resources we've been creating over the last year to help inclusivity, equity, safety of LGBTQ plus people in fieldwork for allies to use, as well as for people themselves who are going to be most affected.
There you go.
That's my
Catherine,
quick plug.
Catherine, I mean, everybody's been doing this work recently. There you go. Robin's just giving you a brilliant resource. I'll put that link in the chat. Robin, thank you so much for your time this afternoon. Really, yeah, it's been really fantastic. And I'll let you get back to planning your conferences.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Coffee and Geography. If you're enjoying the show, be sure to subscribe on your favorite podcast app and leave us a rating or review. It really helps. Some episodes are also available with video, so don't forget to check out the Geogrambling's YouTube channel for more. Stay in the loop by following us and using hashtag CoffeeJogPod on Blue Sky and LinkedIn. That's hashtag CoffeeJogPod, where we share updates on new episodes and upcoming guests. Got a question for a guest? Post it on LinkedIn or Blue Sky using hashtag JogQ Yes, hashtag JogQ and we might just feature it on the show. Keep exploring, keep connecting, and as always, keep geogging.